Hi, Sheila. I'm so excited that you are joining us today.
Thanks,
for
Anne.
Women's Conference.
I know. My first time at Women's Conference. I'm so excited.
I am so excited to introduce you to all my friends. I asked you to share your story, your life with us, because we're getting to know each other. And so this is just a conversation between two friends.
Absolutely.
We're entering into people's living rooms and laptops and just joining them in this conversation about joy. And so I wanted to ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell me about Shaila.
Well, I think, like many people in Canada, I grew up where my parents were immigrants. I think that's true of you, right?
Yeah, totally. My parents came from Lebanon.
Yeah, so my parents came from India, and they immigrated over in the early 1970s. So I was born in Canada, but I feel like I have this real immigrant mentality that I think lots of us have grown up with. Work hard, make it worthwhile for your parents to come here. So I grew up as the oldest child. My mom is from England. Many people will look at me and say, "You don't look Indian." No, my mom's originally from England, but long story, she came from India with my dad. And so I was raised in southwestern Ontario, good family upbringing. My mom, had a lot of Indian tendencies, so we eat a lot of good Indian food around my house. I love it. And so it's just a great upbringing with a younger sister, younger brother. We were all raised to believe that school doesn't finish till you're done university. So
Totally. Yes.
yeah, when you come from an immigrant family, that's the only way. Like, there's nothing like high school is not the end. University, first degree is the end, and then maybe a second degree. I didn't go there. But we just really were raised with education. Sports were important to us. We played a lot of sports. And I know I may not look like it now, but I was quite the athlete in my day. But that was like 20 plus years ago. And now we were raised in an entrepreneurial home. So I really think a lot of what makes me is being an entrepreneur and seeing opportunities for all sorts of things around every corner. So I'm very good at giving advice, even when people don't like it. I have advice on what you could do this and you could do that. But I see opportunity around every corner. And so I had a great family upbringing, great extended family. Indians travel as a pack. There's never a small amount. Is that the same with your family?
Completely.
Like, my family is not just the 13 of us. It's 47 of us.
Totally.
And so when we get together at Christmas, it's 47 of us. And growing, of course, as people have babies. So I just love that family of origin, and went to university, went to Huron College at the University of Western Ontario, had a great experience there. Ran Frosh Week back when Frosh Week wasn't orientation week. It wasn't about how to understand how to go to university and find your classes. It was more about how to party. So I had this crazy background of event planning and entrepreneurial family marketing. So I've just always loved business and loved the opportunities that Canada gave to us as a family.
Yeah. That's just so incredible because a family is such like a core to who you are, right? But you say you kind of aren't an athlete anymore. But listen, Miss Weightlifter woman, what is that all about? You're still an athlete today.
I'm one of those people that always needs a coach to help me with anything, and so I decided that during COVID, I'm not traveling for work. I cannot have the excuse of not getting fitter. And so I hired a personal trainer, and she helps me try and get in shape. And I've been doing some weightlifting, and I put it on Instagram. Yes. And it's kind of embarrassing sometimes. I'm like, oh, is that what I look like when I lift weights? But I love it.
Like a powerhouse woman?
I'm
it's
trying.
Like the real life Wonder Woman. Like, what in the world? Oh, wow. So you go to university. Like, when do you start exploring this question about faith stuff? Like, was this like your upbringing or
Yeah, my mom raised us going to church. We went to a small village church, which for those of you who are living in the big city, not village church, like a little town, a little community church, Anglican church, had a wonderful farming community. And so really learned about faith there growing up, but it was my mom's faith. And my dad didn't start to take faith seriously till I was like in my older teenage years, but it was my mom's faith, and I liked it. I liked going to church, but it was not for me once I went to university. I was like, isn't that for old people? Isn't it for people who need a crutch? Isn't it for people that need help with life? I'm doing quite well, thank you very much. So it wasn't that interesting to me. As soon as I left home and was free from it, I was like, good, done. I'll come back to that when I'm older.
Yeah, and you're really successful in your studies. You're academic. You're getting good grades. And what else did your life look like at that point?
Calling me academic might be a stretch. I wouldn't call myself academic. I just say I went to
Learner.
university, I graduated from university, and that's as far as it went. Because I honestly found other things far more intriguing in life. I found, finding great friends, fitting in, having cute boys around, one in particular. All those sorts of things were really important to me in those university, post-college years. And I found myself chasing dreams that I felt, in retrospect, were just fleeting. They were like air. They weren't really substantive in my life. And so I've often found that I'd go for something and then find it less fulfilling than I'd hoped. You achieve something, you feel good about it for a moment, and then that passes. And so I was really in university having the best time of my life, but at the same time, in the core of who I was, I wondered if there was more. And I had lots of questions, but I really didn't think Christianity had any answers for me. I'd kind of tried that out. I'd grown up with it, not satisfying. So why would I even think to look there? So I did a lot of other exploring.
And what caused you then to, as you're doing all these other explorations, what caused you to go, what about Christianity again?
It was the strangest thing. I met a friend. We had a mutual friend at university who said the two of you would get along so well. I didn't know why, and one day we met, and I just liked her. She liked me. We did get along really well. We had a lot of common interests, and we came back to our final year of university, and I had just finished running orientation week for 5,000 first-year students. That was my summer job, and we'd finished the week, lots of parties, lots of good times. And on the last day, I remember being on University Hill, which is this big hill in London, Ontario, at Western. And I'm down there with my team, and there's 5,000 first-year students in front of us, and we're leading them. And I remember at that moment, when everybody's cheering, it just looks like the best party ever. And I felt the loneliest I'd ever felt. And it was such a weird experience. Like, why would you feel lonely when most people think you must be one of the most popular people in school? Like, you've just ran the biggest party for a week. And I just felt lonely and very dissatisfied.
Loneliness is something that we are talking about so much in this pandemic, but you're talking about 20 years ago, where the loneliness is a thing. And so you find this one friend, you start exploring.
Yeah, so we come back to university. I ran into her the very next day. So Frosh weekends, all the other students come back to campus. It's first day of class. I run into her. And I'm just so taken by her because I had, at that point, found out she was a Christian. And it kind of was strange to me because I was like, she's blonde, beautiful, athletic, academic, wonderfully warm and loving to everyone. And she was very different from most students. Most students, including me, were all about me. And I felt university taught me how to be more about me than anything else. And at that time, she was about me and others. Her life was externally focused, and I knew that was not normal, at least in my circles. People were great, but they were still all about them. And when I finally got to ask her about why she was like she was and why she believed, she would always point to the person of Jesus. And again, I had this tape running through my head, well, that doesn't matter and that doesn't mean anything, there must be something else. And it took me a number of months of meeting with her, meeting with a small group of women and exploring faith and exploring it from her vantage point, not my mom's or mine from growing up in this rural church. And I realized, oh my goodness, the person of Jesus is actually fabulous. And I suddenly realized that so many things I care about, being an entrepreneur, making opportunities for others, leadership development, caring about women and seeing women fulfilled and seeing them live out in all their gifts and potential that they have inside of them, that I was already passionate about that time, I realized that Jesus was passionate about it. And it wasn't the Jesus I think I was taught about. It was a Jesus that was kind of newly emerging for me. And he was always that way. It was just I hadn't understood him to be that way. And so all of a sudden I decided, okay, I want to know him. I want to know him for myself. And so I went on a journey and I decided, no, I'm going to put my full trust in him and I'm going to follow him. And I've never regretted it. But it took some time. I had to explore. I did it with a safe group of women. And I knew they just loved me for who I was. And it was the love that won me over, truthfully. It was their love that they then identified as being Jesus' love through them.
Wow. Because your life didn't go from like how you were living to all of a sudden fully like perfect. And sometimes we think that's what this means. But you encounter Jesus, you're like, okay, I'm making this my own. And then how does this like wrestle with joy come in? Because you sounds like you're felt fulfilled, like you got life together, life's going good, got good friends, got good, community, that kind of thing. You're fulfilling your dreams. How did you see this wrestle with joy play out in your lifetime?
Well, first of all, let me just be honest and say I've given you the shiny version.
Oh, for sure. I know. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like we all have a shiny version that I want everyone listening to believe the shiny version is the full story. And
I'm
it's
asking you
not.
to go deeper.
Yeah,
Let's
and it's
go past
not,
the
right?
shiny. Yeah.
It's like we all have wonderful families, but we all know we have secrets. We all know that we've had great experiences, but we all know the ones that we hide in the closet. We all have expectations of life that could be just an expectation. They're not even tied to secrets that don't work out. And I have a closet full. And so as much as, the way we've started this conversation, it sounds so great. And people may think, wow, great family, great education, great opportunities. She has a great spiritual life. But what they don't hear is there's pain behind there that I don't always like to talk about. It's hard, right? It's hard to say there's more to this story than the shiny side.
Totally. And then as you kind of dig into that, and that's where I want us to go in our conversation, because I think that is the whole point even of having this conversation, is to reveal the not shiny side, the stuff that is dark, the stuff that is painful, and how we can actually still experience joy.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about what does that look like? How have you experienced that wrestle? It's truly a wrestle.
It's a wrestle, and I think I've worked really hard to recognize that joy doesn't come from my circumstances. Mm-hmm. I always thought it did, right? Like if I could just have this perfect life or these circumstances come together, this holiday, this experience with my husband, if I could have had children. I've not been able to have children, even though we would have desperately loved to have kids. Like all these different life circumstances that come along, I always thought, well, if then, and if this happens, then I'll have joy. And it's taken me a long time and a maturing process over my many years of being a woman of faith and a woman who follows Jesus to recognize that actually my joy is found in a person and it's not found in my circumstances, which sounds kind of weird, right? Like, what do you mean joy is found in a person? Because if you think of joy is found in your husband, we may all say, sometimes, maybe in the first year of marriage or the first month of marriage. But that's not where our joy comes from a relationship with another human being, although there's great fulfillment. And there's great reasons to find lots of moments of wonder and awe and happiness. But I've realized that joy is actually in a relationship with the person who made me. Joy is in that belief and complete conviction that I'm known and loved, regardless of how many secrets lie in that little closet, regardless of how many good things happen or bad things happen, that joy is found in a relationship with the person of Jesus, which sounds, I know, odd, but it really has transformed my life completely.
What are some of the practical examples where you've lived that out? Where you're like, okay, this is really hard, God. What I'm going through is really difficult, yet you're with me.
Yeah. When I was 32, my best friend, Rachel, who was the same person who loved me in university and helped me find faith, she got diagnosed with breast cancer. And when you're 32, we've all just been married for a few years. She had her second child was 6 months, and she found a lump, and it got great treatment. double mastectomy, lost her hair in chemo, best attitude ever, real deep spiritual life, faith in Christ. And she went through that. We walked with her through that. But then 5 years later, it came back into her liver and her bones. And she was given 6 months to live. And I'm telling you, it's earth-shattering at the age of 37 to know that your best friend, the person who's been so significant, because she had helped me find my faith life, participate in that in a huge way. She then recruited me to move out to Vancouver from Ontario, and we were roommates. She introduced me to my husband, right? They were longtime family friends. And then suddenly, at the age of 37, I'm having to help her die.
Help your friend die. Like, that's such a
Yeah.
powerful sentence you just said there.
Yeah.
Like, I'm already choking up because I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, this is what was going through your head. Like, where is Jesus in that moment?
Yeah, it was unbelievable that I thought I was going to help her die, and she taught me how to live. Oh, now we're both going to cry. Now we're both going to cry, because here's what was amazing. She had such faith that this was not the end of her life, that she lived it. I was with her for a number of hours on her last day here on earth. And even to that, she was filled with hope for what was coming, her next life, where her body would not be broken, her body would not be falling apart, but she would have a new body and a new hope in heaven. And so as much as I did all the practical things of helping plan her funeral, helping her husband and her kids, through this very traumatic time, sitting on her bed, planning her funeral, working with her, she did a talk at the casino over in Richmond, believe it or not. She did a talk. She wanted to do a talk called Death is Not Dying.
Oh my.
And they filled it out, 500 women, sold out, and they had a couch so she could lie down if she needed to give the talk lying down, or a podium if she could stand. She could stand, and she did the whole talk. And it was so moving. And so helping someone die, but then learning how to live because of it, learning how to appreciate every good thing that comes your way is life-changing. And I wish she was alive today. I said to God many times, I don't have kids, take me. Yeah. But that wasn't the plan. And so that's an earth-shattering time to lose your best friend. And I remember walking with my husband and her husband and 2 kids and being so involved in their lives following her death. And then would you believe it, not even a year later, I got my own life-threatening illness. It was crazy. It was really crazy.
I know there's a lot of people that think that life with Jesus means that everything is like smooth sailing.
No.
And this is not the reality. What you're
No.
saying is, come and be with me in the midst of all of this suffering and pain and, the loss of grieving your friend. And now so what's happening with you? What happened there?
So I won't tell the long version of the story, I'll try and keep it short, but I got diagnosed with a disease called Cryptococcus gattii, which is fungal meningitis. Most people know that they can get viral meningitis and bacterial meningitis, but they don't know about fungal meningitis. It grows on trees, and we breathe it in, and usually only people with HIV/AIDS get it. And they actually had to test me because they thought, why is this ordinarily healthy person walking around with this very awful disease? And thankfully I didn't have HIV/AIDS, but I had some sort of compromised immune system that they've never to this day found the source of. And so I ended up in the hospital. They say, you're going to be here for 8 weeks. Well, we all know the Canadian healthcare system, universal healthcare, but come in, get out as fast as you can. And when they tell you 8 weeks, it's really serious. And not only that, they said the drugs are as bad as the disease. You could lose your eyesight, you could go deaf. We have to check your liver and kidney function multiple times a day while you're on these drugs. So you can only imagine. I think it was worse for my friends and family because I don't remember a lot of it. I was in so much pain. So what happens is The disease comes in through your respiratory system and it attacks your brain. And you end up with a fungal ball that's multiplying at a very fast rate. And mine happened to be at the base of my brain. And once it reaches a particular size, they can only get it out with an operation. So they're fighting that rapidly expanding fungal ball in your brain. And they were hitting it with drugs. I was having blood work done multiple times a day. I had multiple spinal taps, multiple chest x-rays, multiple MRIs. The spinal tap, the lumbar puncture, well, that's a beauty with a needle that long. Oh. And I think I had 7 because they were trying to take the pressure off my brain because it was just the worst headache you could ever imagine. So it was really traumatic, not allowed visitors, although my big Indian family did come.
Of course they did.
Because that's what Indian families do.
Burst right in.
Oh, my word. My poor husband, who's Dutch. 13 of them. I'm not supposed to have one visitor other than my immediate family member, which was my mother or my husband, kind of intermixing. No, 13 of them decide to come from Ontario.
Oh, wow.
Fly in, visit me
Feel the
for a couple
love.
hours, feel the love. And I loved it, right? I loved it. But that's just what family is. So about 5.5 weeks in, I was doing this roller coaster of some days better than others, lots of care, lots and lots of people praying. I was so grateful to the people that were praying. And I remember on the Friday, Good Friday, Easter weekend, my pastor came in, my church leader, he came in and said something he's never said to anyone before. He said, I think God may want to heal you. And can I pray for that? And I was like, okay, yes, because this is just awful, this roller coaster. I'm better, I'm worse, I'm better, I'm worse. I was heading in the right direction. And it was about 5.5 weeks in. And he laid hands and prayed over me. And I didn't feel anything happen. At the moment, it was like, whatever, great. Thank you for coming to visit us in the hospital. Yeah. And on the Tuesday following Easter weekend, I went in for an MRI, and they were checking the size of the fungal ball. And I went in, and I remember just as you're going in, you're caged in. It's the most awful test. And I remember saying to God, do you want to heal me? And then I thought, nah. I don't know why. I just thought, no, probably he doesn't. And the next day, the doctor comes rushing in. I had an infectious diseases specialist doctor. He comes rushing into my room on his rounds, and he said, have you seen your results from your MRI? I said, no. He said, I can't believe it. He said, it's gone. I said, it's gone? Like, yay, the drugs worked, it's gone? And he said, no, it's gone. It's like disappeared. He said, when your drugs work, you're left with a scar on the base of your brain for the rest of your life where the fungal ball was. And we always have to tell you so that you know, if you ever have an MRI for a scan, you know what that scar is, and you can tell them. He said, but it's not there. Literally, he said, it's as if it never existed. You're completely healed. You can go home today. You should have seen it. This is the funny part. I was in a cardiac ward, and I was over in Richmond General Hospital, not in the city, but I live in the city. That's another story. And I was in a cardiac ward because it was the safest ward for me to be in because I had a compromised immune system. I had 3 other people in the room. You could have heard my husband a mile away. He was shouting, he was screaming, he couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my goodness. And I said at the top of my lungs, Jesus healed me. And he's like, well, I'm not sure about that. And I was like, no, I know. And I was like so loud because I was just like, oh my word. I didn't even have faith that I could be healed like this. Oh, yeah. And then I just remembered, God is so kind. Even when we don't have faith, he gives us what our deepest heart longing is for. And so whether it's the secrets in the closet that I prefer to keep in the closet, or whether it's Rachel dying, or whether it's my own illness, it's unbelievable how kind he can be to give us our heart's desire when we don't even think we're deserving, or we don't even have enough faith to pray for it. And so now I have this very strange, to many people, faith. I love to pray for people for miracles. And if we were live at your conference, I'd be like, anybody want a miracle for healing? I'll pray for them. I'll lay hands on them, and I'll pray and ask God to heal them. Because I have such faith that God can do it. Whether you believe in him or not, I think he loves to heal. But I hold it Sorry, I'll just say this, but I hold it very delicately because Rachel didn't get the miracle.
Right. Yes.
And it's the strangest thing, right? To be like, I totally believe in miracles, but I've seen the crushing devastation when we don't get them. It's a really interesting position to be in, but I believe for great things, even when we don't always get the miracle we want.